So now let's talk a bit more about managing net export, because see, all our analysis so far, most of our analysis so far has to do with cases where net export is going up or it's going down, and we've of course made our preference known that we don't want a large negative net export. So if we have preferences regarding how much we want net export to be, then of course we need ways of managing net export, right? If it gets too far away from what we want it to be, we want to have ways of bringing it under control. So let me write down what net export is. We know that already, of course. It's export, which is dependent on this, minus import, which is this. Okay. So when we talk about managing net export, what we effectively mean is we either want to increase trade surplus or we want to decrease trade deficit. Either way, what we want to do is either we want to increase export, or we want to decrease import, or we want to do both. Okay, so if you guys think about it for a while, the most obvious solution to this seems to be a depreciation, or effectively when our currency gets weaker relevant to another currency. If we have depreciation, what does that mean? So if we think between Bangladesh and India, I don't know what the actual, let's talk about USA because I know the exchange rate. What I know is that $1 is equal to 85 taka. Okay, now suppose there is a depreciation. And because of that, $1, since taka has become weaker, is suppose equal to 95 taka. What that means, what this means, I'm going to write this down. First of all, is that import is expensive. I'm talking about people from Bangladesh. Import is expensive because to buy goods worth $1, previously we had to spend 85 taka. But now to buy goods worth $1, we have to spend 95 taka. So import is expensive. As a result, import is going to go down, right? So effectively, what's happening is right here, this. E is going up. As a result, M is going down. This is the first thing that will happen. Second thing that will happen, for people from USA, goods from Bangladesh have become cheaper, right? For USA, 1 taka used to be what, 1 by $85, but now that's gone down to 1 by $95, which is cheaper. So what will happen is export. So import goes up, export goes, what I'm writing, goes down, and export goes up. So see, that's what we wanted, right? We wanted net export to go up. As a result, we had two policies. One is we could have increased export, or we could have decreased import, or both. And so what it looks like is that a depreciation is going to give us both. Okay. So now we're not going to talk about how a government can cause depreciation or appreciation, how we can change the value of our currency. We will do that in the next chapter. But suppose government has ways of making this happen. Okay, government has a way of creating depreciation. And when they do that, let me clear up this a little bit. So when there is depreciation, effectively, what do we mean by depreciation? We mean that there is a change in the net, not the net, the exchange rate, and as a result, there's going to be three effects. Okay, so when E changes, first that will happen, first thing is export will increase. We've talked about why. Second thing that will happen, import will decrease. We've talked about this as well. These are the two obvious things that will happen, but a third thing will also happen, and this is the important thing. We have epsilon here. We've dealt with that, export going up. We have an epsilon here. We've dealt with that, epsilon up, import going down. But we also have an epsilon here, right? So the 1 by epsilon that we have will increase. No, sorry. This is decreasing. So of course, 1 by epsilon, this will increase. Okay, so when we consider the third effect, what's happening is, let me write down this equation, nx equal to, we have x, this is going up, that's fine. Minus, we have m, this is going down, that's fine. But we also have 1 by epsilon. This entire thing is going up. This is going down, this is going up. Therefore, the important, let's talk about what this means. This means, the third one is that even though number 2 tells us that import will decrease, the cost of imported goods will increase. Now, of course, we knew this, right? Import is becoming more expensive. So effectively, when we look at net export, this is going up. But over here, we have one thing going down multiplied by another thing going up. So the question is, which effect will dominate, right? And we've talked about this previously. I mentioned it very briefly. Where is it? Did I mention it? Oh, I may have, never mind. Okay, so as a result, what we need is, if we want depreciation to increase net export, what has to happen is that export going up and import going down, both of this together has to be large enough to compensate for the rise in cost of import. So just as a numerical example, suppose you were buying something for 10 taka and you were buying 3 of it and you were spending 30 taka. Okay, now import has gone down. So suppose you're buying 20 of this, but price have also gone up because, you know, we're importing it from another country and exchange rate has gone down. If this is now 20 taka, so you see that even though we're buying fewer, we are spending more. Of course, if price had gone up, but if it had gone up to 12, then we would be paying 24, which would be less than 30. So that's what this is saying, is that if we want depreciation to increase net export, then this change, these two changes, rise in X and fall in M, have to be large enough to make sure that this increase in cost is enough to compensate. It's enough to be compensated. Okay, this is what we need. If this does not happen, then depreciation will increase net export, which isn't what we want. So the question is, does this happen in reality? Are rise in X and fall in M usually large enough to compensate for the rising cost of import? And evidence, data shows us that it does happen. And that is known as, this is known as the Marshall-Lerner Condition. Okay, so this is after two economists. Most of you should have heard about Alfred Marshall by now, and this is Abel Lerner. Two of them observed this relationship that whenever there is a depreciation, the effect of rise in X and fall in M tends to compensate for the rise in cost of import. And so we call this the Marshall-Lerner condition. However, as with most things macro, there is an additional layer of complication that we need to talk about. Okay, so let's take a look at another case study. Okay. So suppose a country is operating a large trade deficit. Okay, and they want to fix this. They want to reduce their deficit without changing Y. Okay, so that's what they want. Is that we've already seen in these two examples, these two cases over here, is that if we want to, there are ways for increasing our net export, but that leads to change in Y. Okay, in this case, what we want is we want to increase our NX without changing Y. How might we do that? Let's take a look at that graphically. Okay, so we have Y here, and we have Z here. We have the 45-degree line. What else do we have? Suppose this is our Z set. Okay, we are at this point initially, and so the country has a large trade deficit. So let's draw that. NX. So this is of course our equilibrium. Suppose this is Y0. Suppose this country is here. Okay, that doesn't look nice. Try and do better. Oh, looks same. Anyways, this is NX. So what you see is that this country, let me use another ink. This amount from here to here, this much, this is the country's, actually I don't want to write it down because I have more things to draw, but this is how much trade deficit the country is experiencing. Okay, so what might be a solution to that? We've talked about depreciation, right? If we have a large trade deficit, what we want to do is we create depreciation, and as a result, the value of X will go up, the value of N will go up, and as a result, you know, we solve our problem. So suppose we do that. Okay, suppose we manufacture a depreciation which leads to a rise in NX. So we end up here. Okay, we end up here. So what has happened is that at this level, we've ended up here where the trade deficit has disappeared. So let's write that down as well. So therefore, trade deficit goes away. Okay, it seems like we have solved our problem, but there is something to worry about. When we say that net export is going up, what we mean is that export is going up, import is going down. When export goes up and import goes down, what's going to happen? Z is going to go up, right? So what we are going to observe is this. And that is a problem. We did not want to change our Y. This is not what we wanted. But unfortunately, we have ended up in this place, which is, first of all, a higher Y. Second of all, once again, we have trade deficit. So we haven't really solved our problem, have we? This is not what we wanted. So what can be a solution here? What we need is a policy mix, not just one policy, but we need a few things to work together to solve this problem. The first step was depreciation, which took us from this point, NX, to this point on NX prime. Okay. The problem is that when we move from A to B, our Z is also increasing. So what do we do to stop that from going up? Z has already gone up. How do we bring it back down? Second thing that we do is we implement a contractionary fiscal policy. Or in short, we reduce G. Right? So you guys remember the equation for G, right? Z equals to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So when we reduce G, what does that mean? Right here, because we're reducing G, we are coming back down to ZZ once again. So here's what happened. We were at NX, we had a trade deficit of AB, and we were operating at this point, at Y0. We manufactured a depreciation, which led us to go from NX to NX prime. As a result, we moved up from A to B, and our trade deficit was taken care of. Problem is, the moment that happened, the moment X went up, M went down, our Z also increased. And as a result, we moved from Z to Z prime. To stop this from happening, we implemented a contractionary fiscal policy. Effectively, we reduced G. And because G went down, Z also went down. And we came back from Z, we went to Z prime, then we came back down to Z prime. And so this was our equilibrium. We moved here, but then we moved back here again. And now this satisfied exactly what we wanted. We are at this point, so we no longer have our trade deficit problem. That's taken care of. And we're back to Y0, which was our level of income, what we wanted. So the takeaway from this is that as we make things more and more complicating, consider all the things that we have done since ECO 207 in this course. First, we've added expectation. Now we've opened up the economy. We're making things more and more complicating. We're getting closer to what the scenario is in reality. We're getting rid of our simplifying assumptions. The takeaway is that as we do that, as we get closer to a more realistic scenario, we are going to start to need to use policy mixes to solve our problems. One policy is probably not going to solve whatever we're trying to solve. We're going to need a mix of different policies. Okay, so just keep that in mind. We have one more video, one small thing to do, and then we're done with this chapter.